Hello my fellow subscribers and viewers on YouTube. I know you guys are used to seeing me use Trump's voice when making these videos. Don't worry, we will still do that. However, what you have to understand is that doing that particular process is very time and energy consuming. What I am doing here with Google Vids costs a lot less energy and time. I feel it's not fair for my supporters or watchers to go a week or more without content, so I will be using this and Trump's voice periodically. I hope that does not turn you guys away. Now, on to the video. Today we will be reviewing a PBS political theory channel ran by a woman who seems to be less than on par with reality. I hope you all enjoy it, and if you do, please like and subscribe.
What does it actually mean to be a woman?
Yeah, we're going to be starting with another one of those questions. You know, the type that people pose to sound like a philosopher, but in reality it's just to shove a political narrative down your throat. I mean, come on. Anyone who's taken a biology class knows what it means to be a woman. It's not rocket science, for fuck's sakes.
In 2013, Amy Stevens was fired from her job as a funeral director 2 weeks after coming out as a trans woman. Her boss testified in court, explicitly stating that he fired her because she was no longer going to represent herself as a man.
Well, that was generous of him for even bothering to give a reason at all. Most employers either lie or don't give a reason. Now, whether that was right or wrong to do is a question for the ethics committee. However, let's look at this point of view. If you hire a man named Frank who one day shows up to work in a dress and says, "I am no longer going to identify as a man," do you imagine you will realistically keep them employed? Probably not. You would have to deal with customers who would be uncomfortable being around them and lose business, or have issues with female employees, complaining that Frank keeps trying to go into the women's bathroom. This situation is no different. She was hired as a woman, later chose to change that position, and now is no longer welcome in her place of employment. Again, I am not arguing whether the decision to fire he or she or whatever it wants to go by is right. However, it is not unreasonable when you consider the practical issues and loss of face by keeping such a person employed. Yet this woman is using it as an example of discrimination. Give me a fucking break.
Over the next 7 years, this case of sex discrimination was debated and appealed until the Supreme Court ruled in 2020 that firing someone for their LGBTQ identity is indeed against the law.
Correct. It is absolutely illegal to fire someone based on race, sex, or religion, or sexual orientation. Nevertheless, there are nuances that people need to understand regarding this issue. The first being is the law is not absolute. Employers are not always required to tell you why you are let go, and will often make up a reason if asked. I know a lot of you will say that does not count since the employer did say the reason, and it was because she became trans. You are right. However, the law preventing it did not exist at the time. Moreover, the law does not stop the phenomenon from happening. It just lets employers know that they have to be hush-hush, if that is indeed the reason.
Meet Lucy. That's what paleoanthropologists named the fossilized remains of one of the oldest known human ancestors. Now, Lucy... Sorry, producer's in my ear. We only have 10 minutes. I can't start with Lucy? Fine. Okay, I guess we'll start in the 1790s.
Was that her attempt at a joke? Feels more like she just wasted 30 seconds of our lives that we're never getting back.
With Mary Wollstonecraft's Bangin' Treatise. In A Vindication of the Rights of Woman, she pushed back against what was then a pretty common idea, that women weren't capable of abstract thought and reasoning, so it didn't make sense to educate them. Cool.
I agree that is a terrible reason not to educate women. However, women are far from the only ones to suffer from this idea. For centuries, societies followed feudalism, which basically determined people's value at birth. So, if you were lucky enough to be born to a rich noble family, you had a life where your opinions could be listened to, and one day you were expected to lead others for your household and country. If not, then your life was centered on shoveling shit and dying of the bubonic plague. Such is the case for millions of men and women alike. What's my point, you ask? That women are not the only ones to be deemed by society to not be worth educating, as this biased feminist is painting the picture to be.
In the US, the feminist movement made several big strides during the Civil Rights era. The Equal Pay Act of 1963 made it illegal to pay men and women working the same job different salaries.
And yet we still have feminists lying and claiming that women make less money for the same job. The truth of the matter is that women are paid the same amount as men if they work the same jobs and devote the same amount of hours. However, women tend to focus on family over careers and take way more paid time off than men do. As a result, women statistically earn less, despite individually earning the same. Feminists of the past helped many women and set this country right. The women who operate it now, however, are little more than privileged brats that focus more on getting likes on TikTok than they do about civil liberties or even caring to vote and run for office.
And the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision protected the right to abortion, which many people saw as essential to women's freedom. Although, yeah, that last one was overturned in 2022. So needless to say, abortion is still a very contemporary feminist debate.
All right, eat a Snickers bar, cause there is a lot to unpack here. First and foremost, abortion is not a matter of women gaining their freedom. Abortion is a complex issue and is at best morally gray. The act of aborting a child is, from a scientific point of view, killing a baby, a living being. Although some would argue it's just a clump of cells, cells are the basic unit of life and is thus still killing a living organism. Now, regardless if you think abortion is wrong because you're killing a baby or right because it's a woman's choice, just remember a crucial fact. Women do not have a constitutional right to abortion, nor is abortion a civil right. What Miss Feminist is not telling you is that the reason the law was struck down was because, upon reviewing the Constitution, there was no grounds for the Supreme Court in the 70s to make it a civil right in the first place. That is why it was removed in 2020. And don't think I am about to let that last comment slide. Abortion is not a feminist debate, as it is not exclusively a female issue. Abortion affects the father and the mother equally. Feminists may not think so, but then again, they would have men be subservient to women, or not exist in extreme cases. Thus, I would not put too much stock on their point of view.
Like, in 1949, the French writer Simone de Beauvoir argued in her book The Second Sex that for words like equality to mean anything, we have to acknowledge that man and even human aren't neutral terms.
That is, without a doubt, the stupidest argument I have ever heard. Human is not gender specific just because they have the word man in it, nor does it make the word equality less meaningful. Man is also a part of the word to say woman. So, unless you're going to argue that it is discriminatory to call females women because of the word man in it, then the argument is pointless and unintelligent.
Here's another way to think about it. Why do we just say basketball when we mean men's basketball? But we always specify women when we talk about women's basketball. These words conceal a distinctly male perspective. The book also includes such mic drop lines as, and I quote, "The most mediocre of males feels himself a demigod as compared with women." I've got to put that on a t-shirt.
All right, and based on what data did you reach this conclusion? Oh, that's right. You didn't, because you are a woman and a feminist, and therefore don't need to fact-check your information beyond a book that some dead woman of the past wrote. Gotcha.
If women had been paid minimum wage for all the unpaid labor they did in 2019, they would have made $10.8 trillion. Look at all those zeros.
Okay? What's your fucking point? It's women who are choosing to not work as much as men. It never ceases to amaze me how women won't do the work and quite naturally won't get anything, and yet say with a straight face, it's society's fault, not them.
Wollstonecraft had previously identified a sort of similar concept, a quote, tyranny of man, which described how men held power over women and stood in the way of their freedom.
You know, it's also men who gave women their freedom too, right? Maybe that's the problem with all these dumbass feminist authors. They keep making the narrative that men are the issue and that we stand in the way of their progress. However, what they don't realize is that in order to gain freedom or recognition from an oppressive system, one of two things must happen. Either the oppressed rise up and successfully destroy the system that treated them badly, or find people who directly benefit from the system to hear your arguments, and then say, yeah, you're right, this sucks, we need to change it. In the former case, it's possible but very difficult, and on the latter it can happen but tends to take a long time. In feminism's case, men in power became sympathetic and agreed to abolish gender discrimination. Had that not happened, women would not enjoy the freedom they have today. So like us or hate us feminists, but one way or another, you need us.
But patriarchy did something a bit broader. It described a whole range of beliefs and values that oppress women, ones that are kind of hidden and baked right into our systems. Like, in 248 years, we haven't elected a woman president, despite having no law against it.
Lacking a female president is not an act of patriarchy, you idiot. Let's do the math. Women officially gained the right to vote as early as 1920. That means women have had at least over 105 years to run and vote for a female president. But let's ask an even more important question. How high is the female population in 2016 and 2024? Ding ding ding. 50%, and not even half of the population votes in elections these days. That means women have had in 10 years the ability to elect a female president twice, and they either voted against or did not vote at all when that time came around. But of course, your favorite excuse will be, it's men's fault. Well, my viewers, I think we all learned a valuable lesson. Never listen to feminists. They are just a noise that no one needs or deserves to hear. Like, comment, and subscribe, or face punitive fines and fees from Mr. Judge. See you in the next one.